I am the co-founder and chief executive officer for a company called Blockchain Consultants. We rationalize workflows using distributed technology and decentralization. I'm also the facilitator for a thing called Blockchain Weekly. Every week I interview someone who's doing interesting things in the blockchain space. I do it for an hour. I put it on my YouTube channel. I have 16,000 subscribers and I get between 4,000 and 10,000 views a week on YouTube, which is not much for YouTube, but in the blockchain space it's fairly respectable. And I'm also the co-founder for a thing called the Blockchain Consortium out of Phoenix, Arizona, and we're simultaneously opening 14 different companies going through a Reg CF, hoping to do SDO tokenization in 2020. And you are?
My name is Bill Ottman. I'm the founder and CEO of Minds. We're an open source and moving towards decentralized social network. We have about 1.5 million users, and yeah, this is our CTO.
I guess I was introduced, so I probably don't need to say much more than that. My name's Mark, I'm CTO at Minds, and basically what Bill said.
Hey, my name's Sukvir Sanghera. I'm working on kind of restructuring financial incentives around social networks and figuring out how we can reinvent these social networks that we spend so much of our time on.
I'm Rob. I'm the co-founder at Sapien Network.
At what network?
Sapien Network.
Sapien Network, as in Homo sapiens. Interesting. We're doing a lot of things with, blockchain and humans and interaction and social networks, and this is what it's all about. We're trying not to be Zuckerberg, but we're really, as we build these social networks, beginning to resemble Zuckerberg a whole lot. I think one of the things I want to open up and just talk a little bit, it's, kind of the red herring for me in social networks is proof of identity and how you're addressing that. Does that make sense? You want to open it up with that? I mean, we might as well talk about the hard stuff first, right? So you wanna take that one?
Sure. I think identity is a pretty complicated thing on the blockchain. I think ideally we want to have a unified solution for a bunch of different platforms, but in practice there are a lot of different requirements for each network that sort of make the development of a unified solution very difficult.
Yeah, I think it'd be really cool to build out like a web of trust solution. That was something that was explored a lot earlier on, and then we moved towards more centralized identity providers. I think, yeah, that's probably the way that we should explore it.
I think identity is interesting because ultimately you might not want to give your main identity away just because you're on a social network. You have a right to anonymity. People want to be anonymous, and we provide those tools at Minds, and I think the blockchain also is allowing people to do that. It's kind of interesting though, because you do have issues with spam bots and things like that who abuse that power, so you do have to kind of identify people in a way, but I guess that's some of the challenges that need to be overcome.
I just wanted maybe Mark to add so we're about to launch a project called Nomad, which leverages Ethereum addresses for sort of identity and then use the DAT protocol for peer-to-peer file hosting. And so I was just curious if Mark could talk a little bit about what we're doing with identity and verifying it.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically identity, just a friendly username that translates back to the DAT address where you can share that information. So what we're doing with kind of a fully decentralized social network is we're providing the tools that when you need the consistency, so you need to know everyone's name and how it translates to their addresses, use the blockchain for that. But using the blockchain to post people's posts, images of their dinner or their cats and things, not everyone in the world needs to have all that information. So we're using blockchain for when everyone needs to know everything to be able to talk to each other. But for everything else in the in-between where the consistency is not required, we're putting those on different networks and different communication protocols.
And that's good. I mean, it sounds like Minds has a pretty good kind of a wraparound, and you talked a little bit about the web where we have multiple types of data points that point to an identity and point to a realistic kind of a based on the places that you've been, based on the places that you have logins for in your browser and Brave or something of this nature, we can come up with some kind of assumption that who you are, right? But that could be gamed and gamed fairly easily. But proof of identity really has to be core when we come into social networks. We're doing interesting things like with Telegram. I mean, Telegram was something that when Telegram first came out, we said, why do we need another social network, right? We all said that, right up until the time they did a $107 billion ICO, right? Then we went, oh my goodness, what's going on here? And then EOS did $4 billion, but that's really crazy. And we're still stuck in the same kind of traffic pattern here with, we use Facebook. We can get into different logins at different places with Facebook. But really, Facebook can be gamed and all can be gamed. We're really coming down to a point where we don't have a proof of identity. I mean, it's pretty simple, right? Oh, thank you.
Well, I guess I'm a little. When you say identity, you mean a way of authenticating or proving. I mean, all you have to prove is to someone else who really cares about proving who you are. So
there's more people on Facebook than there are people on Facebook.
Right, but why do you have to tell Facebook your real information?
Exactly, right? Why do you have to tell them your information, and why can't you identify your information on a social network so that you can show it to people that pay you for it, right? I mean...
Yeah, so I suppose that's with people who need to know information, and maybe there's ways that you can do that, but it's more of a trust that you have to have with those people. But I guess you don't.
But it has to be trustless, right? We have to have trust with the people, but it has to be trustless.
But it's like you told me your name. I mean, I'm trusting you that you told me the correct name. I mean, the same thing would happen just because it's on a blockchain. You could have lied.
Well, yeah. Well, I told you the name that I have now. Now that I'm into the witness protection program, right? Or I could tell you a name of 5 different sock puppets that I offer, right? But we're really getting into a point now where, and I think this is a problem. I mean, it's a problem that we're hitting in Nashville. Nashville's having a real problem with proof of identity and trying to disintermediate some of the insurance companies and some of the stuff that goes on in healthcare. It's coming into a real issue within the distribution and logistics change when we're trying to do proof of delivery and proof of loading and proof of delivery. Who's doing that? Who's who in the zoo? Where are they at? Things of this nature. We can store metas, but we really can't understand who it is that's there with a proof of identity. And it just seems to me like, social media is where this should come from, because you had something to say, so.
Well, going back to that, I think like the reason why we're giving our identity and we're centralizing it and making it public, I think for some reason, like humans have moved towards a model where we're uploading as much information as we can to try to get utility out of it. So if we were to make it private and try to keep it to ourselves, we're going to be giving up pieces of the utility that these services offer. So like Netflix, for example, if we kept our information private to ourselves without sharing it to the bigger AI that's giving recommendations, we're going to lose the utility of that. And I think the majority of people don't really care about that privacy, and they would rather have the convenience of it telling you which movie to watch or what should be on your newsfeed. So for some reason, we're moving towards that, and I think trying to hide our identity from people is fighting the momentum of where these social networks are heading.
Right, and I'm not saying hide your identity at all. In fact, transparency is important within blockchain, and as we begin to build these decentralized, as we begin to look at DLT and we begin to integrate DLT into workflows, we begin to understand decentralization and consensus, and we begin to understand that decentralization and consensus should come into multiple organisms and multiple, we should build companies like this. We shouldn't build companies like we're building them. We should build them differently for DLT. So we're moving in, and as we do that, transparency is part of that, right? But in order to get transparency, in order to have transparency, there's a couple of things that have to happen. And Zuckerberg did this with Facebook. First off, he was the first guy in there to start doing a lot of the stuff that we're doing now in social media. And he's totally has gamed the situation and totally abused his rights and I mean, really game the system, right?
Well, I don't know if it is Zuckerberg's fault. I think if you look at the overall system that he's playing in,
So Facebook, we'll take Zuckerberg out. Sorry.
yeah,
Strike that from the record, please.
You could look at any Silicon Valley startup, and the way that the rules are set up, it's to grow as fast as you can. And so he's just really playing by the rules and incentives that.
Thank God we're not in Silicon Valley.
Well, in a way, we're kind of replicating the existing financial markets with like security.
Let's stop that. That's the madness, right?
Exactly. So like I think the real opportunity in social networks is to re-incentivize the financial market around the social network. So rather than just like tokenizing the equity and giving it to shareholders, we need to find a way to distribute it to the whole ecosystem and align the incentives so that whatever it is that we're creating is aligned with like the global consciousness of where we want society to go, not just the corporation that's controlling the system.
I wouldn't say that it's not his fault. I mean, he structured, just because Silicon Valley's doing it, it's not like, doesn't take away responsibility. He created a proprietary centralized platform that no one has any idea what's going on. So it's definitely on the founders of all different projects to, embed principles into how they're building their products.
And I think that's our responsibility, right? And I think a lot of times we just look towards Silicon Valley and say, look, that's the way it's done, that's the way we're doing it, instead of looking at it from a standpoint of everything's broke, right? And starting off, I think proof of identity for me, the big thing, and I'm gonna get off of proof of identity now. We'll move on to something else. But I think that proof of identity should be, a social construct, and it should be something that is on a chain and shared by social media. And I think you guys should, cooperate with one another in trying to figure out the keys to this and figure out the proof of identity. So we can move into, healthcare and things of this nature, and distribution and logistics, STOs. I mean, we're going to do KYC AML. I'm going to be doing some STOs. I'm going to spend a ton of money on KYC AML, right? And I shouldn't have to, right? Does that make sense? So let's talk a little bit about Minds. Interesting project, by the way. Minds.org, right?
Or .com, both.
Okay, well, good for you. And you're the CEO, you're the CTO. How do things, where'd you get started at? I mean, what started all this?
I mean, we always just had a feeling that there was going to be an open source social network. And, over time, so, we're not decentralization purists. Minds.com is using central servers right now. We sort of, there's three main. You have the centralized model, you have the federation model, and then you have the fully peer-to-peer decentralized model, which like DAT and IPFS and these types of projects are pursuing. So we're sort of taking a holistic approach, looking at all of them. Anyone can set up their own Minds stack, and those could potentially federate with ActivityPub. And then you have what we're doing with DAT, which is totally sort of its own separate network. But yeah, I mean, look, Bitcoin is open source money. Wikipedia is open source encyclopedia. It's gonna happen with social. So that's where we're coming from.
Good. And tell us a little bit about the technology that you're using.
There's kind of two sides. And as soon as we're at the blockchain conference, probably mentioned we do use Ethereum as our rewards-based system. And how that came about was when we first launched, we had a points-based system, which was kind of an internal currency that users could spend on advertising, and it was on an internal ledger that we had. And then around this time last year, maybe a little earlier, we just, why not put this on the blockchain? It makes perfect sense. Take it out of our, everyone else was doing it, so take it out of our hands. And let the users take it off the network and exchange with other networks as well. So now our token's on the blockchain. We're also playing around with fully decentralized social networking tools where you can talk to someone with no middleman at all. And that's the really cool stuff. Unfortunately, there's such a barrier to entry of users to do that. And the existing models, you either have to pay to post to the blockchain, and people just aren't going to do that. That's not going to accept the masses. Or you have the federated model where, like the Mastodon or whatever, where you have to you post and relay, and you get these weird usernames and things like that.
Yeah, DTube, I mean, that started out good, and now the silence is deafening, and a lot of those different types of projects that, had some promise are going the wayside. I hope we have it. I mean, it's really important. How about your project? I mean, what makes you unique?
So yeah, I'm working on a project called Assembly. We're trying to use it to organize the impact track, so essentially using social graphs in the missions around the impact track, where people can create projects that tie together multiple missions, and then rather than having like the prize money go to just like a couple projects competing with one another, similar to how kind of our financial markets work, what if we could just distribute it to the social graph of all of these people collaborating together? So using game theory to incentivize collaboration rather than competition, we're exploring new token models around really financial markets.
So Sapien Network uses an Ethereum-based token to incentivize content creators, to reward content creators for creating content. But beyond that, we're leaving it open to create more generalized incentive models to incentivize users for sharing their data if they want to with advertisers, while giving users full control over their data. And going back to identity, I think that's going to be a big problem to tackle. I think the address as identity leaves a lot to be desired in the user experience. I think your average social media user is not used to managing their own private key, for example, and being unable to recover their account if they lose it. So I think there's a lot of work to be done there.
Well, we choose to go to the moon and do the other things, not because they're easy. We choose to do them because they're hard. These are the hard things that we have to begin to tackle, right?
I think it's not, one solution to rule them all either. Like, you can have centralization and decentralization work together. So you can have servers with usernames, and you can have, if people want to go into the decentralized world, sometimes you want to delete stuff. You can't necessarily do that on fully decentralized stacks.
That's true. You can hide it, you can obfuscate it and hide it, but the point is that we have one person on the panel. We've three different social media networks. We had one person on the panel that mentioned, look, we're incentivizing users, and we're allowing advertisers to pay users for their data, which is important. We'll move into that just for a little while, right? When I don't know if we're going to talk Zuckerberg or Facebook or whatever. We'll just put social media, right? So when I say social media, I go, social media, everyone knows it's Zuckerberg, right? So when we go social media, right, and someone's making money on our persona, right, you have a way that you're being able to incentivize and pass that back to the user? Or?
Yeah, so it's a work in progress. Ideally, we would have a community-driven project where different projects would contribute to a way to manage data and incentivize data sharing. I think it's really hard to get away from data sharing in this current age of technology. Data is intrinsically very valuable, and I think any social network will struggle to succeed without exploiting data to some extent. But I think we can really empower users and give them control over that process.
Chime in on that?
Yeah, I think it's just all about consent and just inverting it. So right now they're just following you around wherever you go, physically or in your browser, and targeting you based on that information without asking you, and there's no way to turn it off. So granted, you're probably going to make less money turning it the other way around and getting people to opt in, but that's just how it has to be.
Yeah, I think, I think it has to be different than what it is. I'm not sure what it's going to turn out to be, but I think we can all agree it's got to be different than what it is, right? So, okay, well, yeah, okay, good. We have a dissenting vote here.
So there's this like really cool article called Meditations on Moloch, and there's a new DAO being created around it, and it goes into the different life views of like whether you're humanist or dataist, and there's a strong argument to be made that we're majority dataist, and humanist, I guess, you get your meaning of life through words, like inwards, looking inwards, whereas dataist, the only reason they do things is to kind of share experiences with others. So the, I guess, argument is that by giving all of our data up, we're kind of incentivized to keep sharing, whether it's like Snapchat or Instagram. We're trying to share as much as we can and upload as much as we can. So if we like extrapolate, eventually we're going to have sensors and give more data and more data. And the only way that we give value to the system is by uploading more data. So if we keep going down that track, we're going to get a lot of utility, and whatever AI systems are being created, they're going to keep giving us what, they're going to make our lives a lot easier, but we're going to be giving up our decision-making power to these systems. And I think that's like a bigger question of like, what do human beings, like what is the purpose of like why we're here? So that's like a more philosophical question, but.
Sure, we've got like 10 minutes. We can explore the entire, what's the concept and what's the proof of life, and yeah, we'll dive right into that one. Go for it.
I agree. I mean, but it's still in the beginning all about consent. So maybe you're gonna agree, you're gonna voluntarily live stream your whole life and get paid for that process. But that's different from your phone just gathering that without telling you. Constantly gathering where you're at, and I mean we can, there's ways to. You have half the key, and you have to have the other half to be able to see my data. I mean, we can do that kind of stuff. We really understand what that is, but I'm not seeing it implemented today. I wanted to open it up. Does anyone have a question? But don't mention if it's Zuckerberg. Go social media. Okay, go ahead. Hang on a second here.
Just a quick comment for yours. Daniel Dennett, check him out. He talks about memes. They've existed forever, right? They're not just on the internet. Ideas exist of their own, right? The other thing I was going to say is I feel confident that in the short term, on and off chain cooperating together is going to be the key to early success in the, not maybe in the consumer space, but in the bigger corporate industry government spaces. So that's all I had to say. They're not really questions, but if you want to discuss them.
Yeah, we actually do on and off chain. So we reward tokens for all your activity and contributions, and we do that off chain because it would be way too expensive to do it on chain. But then we give users the option to transact on chain if they want to, and we try to incentivize them to do that. But yeah, I mean that's the only way you're going to be able to give a UX that is acceptable.
Eventually, we'll have oracles and things of that nature that'll do that. We don't have interoperability, but that's another thing about interoperability between social medias. You guys are siloed off into different silos. You're on Ethereum. You're on Ethereum? Okay, so you're all on Ethereum. We should be able to work something together. Go ahead.
So, my name is Ross. I just want to have a kind of a interesting question about censorship. I want to go back to our roots as a nation, as a country, where we were founded upon, our founding father, that we are all created equal. Doesn't matter if it's the smartest, not so smart, or it's maybe the cook dude, whatever. We're supposed to be treated equally, but we have a censorship on our social media. People being deplatformed because their maybe views are too strong or not so comfortable for our general population. So I know a lot of the networks have been kind of challenged in basically throwing people off or kind of telling them, well, your post is going to go way down on the list, not going to be really seen because it's comfortable. So, question about censorship. How do you view censorship, and really where do you think so it's going so people are not deplatformed and really hurt no matter what? Thank you.
Yeah, I think on censorship you have to go off the law. If it's legal in the US, then it is legal, and you can't take these kind of partisan positions like the mainstream social networks are taking. And also they don't even follow their own content policies. Apple has a term on their App Store which just says objectionable content. I mean, what does that mean? It's the most bizarre phrase. Everything's objectionable to someone, I'm sure. So it's very hard to be compliant with Apple, and if they take a slight offense to anything, then they will shut it down.
It depends on what they decide is objectionable.
Yeah, and then ideally getting it out of the network's decision in the first place of what can be taken down or not. We're sort of that's probably the worst part about running central servers is having to do content moderation. So on DAT and blockchain, it's not even possible.
And we have another question. Excuse me. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think if you look at the way that we view trust and content censorship in the real world, it's like the information doesn't flow outside of your network until you gotta go explore it. So using a web of trust, you could create some form of system that everyone would see something different, but you would only see what you're plugged into. So that's one.
I think ultimately to address censorship, we'll need decentralized governance. I think relying solely on legality still requires some authority to arbitrate what is legal. I think we'll need a way to collaborate and decide what is acceptable in a decentralized manner.
You're right. I mean, but we have to start working on these things. I mean, proof of identity has got to become before we have governance, right? And the web of trust, I think we're heading in the right direction with web of trust. I don't know, but I think web of trust makes sense to me. It's just we haven't hit there yet,
Yeah, the hardest part, I mean, it's been tried a lot, but the hardest part is they call it rebooting the web of trust, and like, how do you grow it? The advantage to a centralized system is you can hyper grow it very easily. It's almost like you're taking the slow road with the web of trust, and I don't think anyone's figured that out.
The long way is the short way, and the short way is the long way. Go ahead.
Hi, Shiv Malik from Streamer. If the USP of a decentralized social network is essentially that it could redistribute value back out to its users in a sort of a cooperative model, are people actually prepared, are projects prepared to actually monetize and help monetize that data, right? And actually create and generate value which to distribute? Because the issue might be that you're like, hey, look, we could distribute the value, but unfortunately no one really wants to buy this and we haven't figured out how to do that yet. So, and it kind of just fails on that basis. Are you ready to be kind of almost, advocate for your users in that sense?
I think DTube did a really good job of that, but they haven't, like I say, the science has been deafening. So DTube has a couple of different monetization strategies, right? They have content creators that get paid tips from different viewers and things of this nature. They also have the same monetization strategies that YouTube has that they're beginning to build some bulk on. But I don't think we're there yet. What are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are, if you raise venture capital and you're kind of going down that VC model, you're always going to have to generate returns for your investors. So the great thing about crypto is it allows you to kind of bootstrap a new system where you don't need to go down that road. But I don't know. I'm curious what you guys think.
I think people need to. How do you value what a single piece of data is worth? I mean, it's really, the data in an isolated form is not worth too much. It's when it's in a kind of the aggregated form that then they build.
Well,
the
my data
profile.
is worth a lot more than yours, right?
Well,
That's
I
what
don't know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but and you're going to tell me that your data is worth a lot more than. So if we have,
so it's like, how do you price the individual part, and then once it's already out there, it's out there. So I think people really need to be a bit more cautious about what they are sharing, and don't have an illusion of privacy.
Also, just giving people, the idea that, okay, you're going to get some sort of monthly direct deposit for, Facebook and Google, they just got in trouble with Apple because they were paying college kids like $20 a month to follow absolutely everything they're doing on their phone. So, from that perspective, I forget who it might have been Fred Wilson who tweeted, he was like, so does this mean that that's what data's worth, $20 a month? But it's more, what we're focused on is giving users tools to make money from other users directly who do value their content. And that's helping people earn.
I think cryptocurrencies do provide the opportunity for alternative monetization models, but I think ultimately we'll need to develop a solution to allow users to share their data if they so desire and to be fairly compensated for it.
I think we've had some interesting thoughts and some interesting ideations. Anyone else have any questions? No? No questions? You sure? Yes.
So I guess my question is, ideally, what do you guys think a Web3 based social network would look like or function like? Because it's very easy to sit and beat up the sins of Facebook because they've got plenty, don't get me wrong, but they do provide a utility that a lot of users still enjoy using them. So when we move things to a Web3 model, exactly, what do you see that looking like, and where's the value place for its users?
2 minutes.
So I think
No pressure.
the core value proposition is incentivizing users for providing value to the network, for sharing their content, for example.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's really like this company that everybody works for, that it's not really a company, but everyone who contributes to it, whether you're liking content or anything, you're basically gaining a piece of, you're contributing micro equity to this company.
You mean like decentralized?
Yeah.
What a concept.
I guess the user experience of how people are going to interact with these applications is going to change massively. Just as when the smartphone came out, no one even knew what an app was until we started, different layouts to how a web browser was. So I think there's probably going to be a big change there in how it's approached, and also how users are going to interact with this stuff, especially if it is fully decentralized. How that data is loaded. It's Facebook and all these other networks, and even mine, they have huge backends that are pulling all these feeds together. So essentially that's going to have to be spread out for everyone else to do. So maybe the way those feeds are loaded or the way people interact with them, it's probably going to change, I expect.
I think if we incent people, they'll go away from Facebook, right?
You could go to dat://nomad.minds.com. No, it's a prototype. It's up, so you can see what it looks like. And then, that's what we're working on this weekend. So we're gonna do an Android app that is able to access Nomad too.
So we got a little over a minute left, and that was a perfect segue into shameless plugs. So give us your shameless plug again.
Yeah, that's it. dat://. You have to access it through the Beaker browser. I think Brave and Chromium are gonna support Dat soon, but they don't yet.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the issues. Like, people don't want to have a Beaker browser to have to go to a social network. These are the learning curves that give the barriers. So this is why we're probably thinking mobile first now. That's going to get people through the door, and that's what we're working on this weekend.
If anyone's working on the impact track during the hackathon, we'll be up around the impact table, and we'll show you what we're working on.
Check out sapien.network.
I want to thank ETH Denver. This has been an awesome event. Denver has always been close to my heart as far as blockchain, and the community out here is just next to none in my estimation. A great event. Thank you guys for coming out to Denver, and thanks for spending a little time with us here talking about social media networks and what might happen in the future. And thank you guys for attending the panel. My name is Mike Noel, and I appreciate your time. Thanks.